Oh man, I think he's here. God, what am I gonna do? How do you fight a demon? Oh, no, please don't kill me, please. Please don't kill me.
No good.
I'm sorry, what was that?
I'll teach you agony before you die.
No, I didn't catch that. Could you say that again?
The power of your god is nothing, little man.
No, that was actually worse somehow.
I don't need magic to take your soul.
No, I'm sorry, I'm not catching any of that. Like, at all.
Excuse me. Sorry, frog in my throat. Is this better?
Oh, yeah.
I'm gonna eat your soul.
Oh, okay. You're gonna eat my soul. I wasn't understanding that at all. Wait, eat my soul? Ah! What's going on, everyone? Welcome back. If this is your first time here, welcome for the first time. On here I do movie reviews for horror movies that came out in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. If that sounds like something you think you'd enjoy, hit that subscribe button. Also, click the bell icon, that way you'll be notified when I upload a new video. If you think this is good, go ahead and hit that like button as well. Alright, now we are officially 1 week closer to Halloween, which is awesome. Because this really is the best time of the year. Yeah, Christmas is pretty good, but Halloween is where it's at. Also, I should mention that today is brought to you by the number 22, because that's how many days until Halloween, just in case you lost track of time. And I think this year a lot of us have lost track of time, and our sanity. Okay, well, I suppose I should get down to business and tell you about Demon Wind, huh? Alright, well, let's get into it. Demon Wind came out on September 13th, 1990, and runs for 1 hour and 36 minutes. It was written and directed by Charles Philip Moore. He also directed Dance with Death and Black Belt. Demon Wind is the story of a guy named Corey who gets his friends to join him at his family's farm to try and figure out his family's secret. Well, the movie starts off with us seeing that somebody is being burned at the cross in 1931, and we get some good mood-setting music here as the camera pans over and we see a bloody body laying on the ground. We then move inside a house and the music changes into something far more terrifying. It's an interesting choice with the music for sure. We are shown a bunch of family pictures along with Jesus Christ. No, seriously, we see a bunch of pictures of Jesus, along with what appears to be a voodoo doll and some symbols drawn on the floor. Now that's what I call syncretism. The music switches back and we meet Regina, played by Stella Kastner. You probably recognize her from her other acting credit, Darkroom. We then hear something talking to her saying,
"The spells can't keep us out."
See? Syncretism. And then trying to get in. Regina calls out to her husband, George, who's played by Axel Tui. Toei? No, I think it's Tui. He was in nothing else. She asks him,
"Did you bring the daggers and the diary?"
Before he can answer, we see that he ate a parfait that isn't agreeing with him. Then he starts to transform, and again, I think he might actually be lactose intolerant. I will say, overall, the transformation isn't too bad. And I do think that the red eyes look really cool. Regina then grabs a snow globe and says that if it breaks, it's the end of both of them. George calls her bluff, but it turns out she was telling the truth and they explode. For the most part, not a bad beginning. We then cut to the present, and meet Elaine, played by Francine Lapensee. She was in Fear of Falling and Dead Punks. Driving is Corey, played by Eric Larson, and I don't like Corey. Not one bit. We find out that Elaine recently reunited Corey with his dad and that he hasn't really spoken to her since. He says that since seeing his dad,
There's been this voice inside my head like a loudspeaker. It's telling me to get to that farm.
we then get some more pretty good music along with this random girl. I'm guessing they put this in here because some people are absolutely terrified of gingers, but I didn't really find it that scary. Then we get our first glimpse of Harcourt when they play some music that makes me think his captain just took away his gun and his shield, but he's not going to let that stop him from getting revenge for his partner's murder because he plays by his own rules. Then Corey says that he's been here before in a dream, and we see what happened in his dream. Apparently he met his grandma and she just said, "Welcome home." We then get a closer look at Harcourt, played by Rufus Norris. Alright, so I have to mention something here. The credits list him as Rufus Norris, and IMDb also lists him as Rufus Norris. But IMDb has it as this Rufus Norris. Now, this is listed on this Rufus's acting credits on both IMDb and Wikipedia. But there's no way that this is the same person. I mean, just look at them. Also, this Rufus was 25 when this movie was made. Now, I know they can age people with makeup, but there's just no way that these two are the same person. Alright, for reference, here's an aged Biff from Back to the Future 2, which came out less than a year before this movie. Now, there's no way that Demon Wynn had access to better makeup artists than Robert Zemeckis. But then why do so many sources credit it to him? I mean, what the hell is going on? I would think Rufus Norris is not that common of a name, but it's wrecking my mind trying to figure this out. Anyways, Corey asks how to get to the farm, and he tells them,
"You can't? There's no such place."
I mean, just listen to his voice. There's no way he's 25. He tells them that if they're not going to get any gas, that they should just leave. So naturally, they go inside where Elaine tries to cheer up Corey, to which he responds with,
"A moon for the misbegotten."
Man, he seems like he'd be a ton of fun on a road trip. Then we meet the waitress who goes on about someone called Little Linda and asks if they're friends of hers, which they aren't. They ask her how to get to the farm, and with some persuasion, she says she doesn't know. Then the rest of the gang starts to show up. We have Dell, played by Bobby Johnston. He was in T-Force. Terry, played by Lynn Clark. She was in Santa Barbara. Bonnie, played by Sherry Lee. She was in Slaughterhouse. And Jack, played by Mark David Fritsch. He was in Merchant of Evil. Apparently, Corey asked all of them to come help him figure out what's happening on his family's farm. Now, he says that his dad slit his wrist the day after he reconnected with him, and that 4 days after his dad was born, his family disappeared while he was in an incubator. As they are talking about going to the farm, Harcourt comes in and tells them that they should just leave while they can, because the dead own that land. Before leaving, Corey asks him what he's hiding, and he tells him,
It was a drought of 29.
Wait, didn't it say in 1931 in the beginning? Yeah, okay, I thought so. So, alright, we got some continuity issues going on so far. He says he saw...
Blood everywhere! Black blood on the walls!
Hold on, so the house exploded at the beginning, so how could he see blood all over the place? Oh, we'll just move past that, I guess. When they go outside, we see more friends show up. We have Stacy driving the car. He's played by Jack Forsanito. He was in Night Trap. And in The Cape, we have Chuck, played by Stephen Quadros. He was in Sworn to Justice. Now, we can immediately tell that these are the fun ones in the group, and they actually are my favorite characters in the movie. We also find out that Chuck and Terry used to date, which is what leads to this next ridiculous scene. You know, it's funny how I can accept other things that happen in this movie, but this is just too much for me. They head off and journey to the farm. When they get there, they see the body on the cross from the beginning and see that everything has been burned down. As they are walking, Bonnie trips and finds a skull. After rubbing his feet on some carpet, Corey shocks the skull and he has a vision that shows him the skull belonged to his dad's older brother. As they go to check out the house, Chuck says,
I don't know what happened here, but you can sure tell death walked through this place.
Not a bad line. Not as good as this one.
Shazam!
But not bad. We find out that even though the house is burned down, it looks normal when looking in through the door. And in fact, you can actually go inside, which they do. Well, looking inside, Corey sees all the stuff you would normally find inside of a house. Bonnie decides to read some writing on the wall, and then the house begins to freak out. Now this definitely reminds me of Evil Dead, with the passage being spoken out loud and summoning something evil. Once outside, Bonnie makes Jack promise not to bury her there if she dies, and he does. It's a very specific but weird request to make. Everybody but Corey wants to leave until the skeleton moves on its own, then Corey gets on board. Only the cars won't start, so they decide to walk back to the station. On their way, a heavy fog rolls in, and they end up getting transported to a couple different locations before ultimately ending up back at the farm. Once there, these little girls show up out of nowhere, and when Bonnie tries to run away, she gets turned into a doll and tells Jack,
"You lied."
Well, now, technically he didn't, because although she is a doll now, she's not buried. She's above ground, so not actually a lie. Also, it doesn't seem like anyone is really too broken up about her dying. Del and Corey don't even seem to notice. Also, Corey's kind of acting like an asshole here. Del's upset, and Corey gets mad right back.
How the hell do you know that?
I don't! Just a feeling I have.
You know, hello, you're the one who invited your friends to a haunted farm. At least you could be nice to them. They decide that they'll be safer sleeping in the house than in the cars, and once inside, Corey shows again just how ungrateful he is for them coming to help.
Let's clean up.
Right. So not only do you invite them to a possessed farm, but then you make them do housework? What a jerk, man. While others are cleaning up his house, Corey sneaks off and gets encouraged to check out another room. While in there, he finds his grandma's journal that says her spells aren't working anymore and that there are 2 daggers that are...
Which are part of the sacred set of 7.
And hopefully they will help them against the evil. Syncretism. Corey then explains to the group the farm's backstory. Apparently, his great-grandfather built the farm. His grandparents and others had followed a preacher to this valley, and it turns out that the preacher was a Satan worshiper, and he sacrificed 3 little girls, presumably the same ones that killed Bonnie. But when the others found out what he was doing, they burned him and his followers alive in his house. We then see Chuck and Stacy talking about where they'd rather be when this lady shows up. Alright, I'm not bad. And I love what they do here. Normally in movies like this, when something that is very obviously a trap comes along, usually the people are not suspicious at all, and they just go with it. But here, Chuck and Stacy see her and say,
Demon.
They try to tell the others, but they're asleep. They decide to go outside, and when they do, they show again why they're my favorite characters in this movie.
They're playing our song.
Alright, let's dance.
That's pretty badass, right? When they finally find the lady, we see that she's transformed, and after shooting her, a bunch of other monsters show up, and they start blasting them. And this is like out of an action movie. They don't even reload once. And I love how that one guy goes running by like he forgot his keys somewhere. Also, they throw this guy in, which seems out of place. They look like they're gonna make it when Stacy gets killed by something. I mean, it didn't even look like anyone was near him to me. Finally, the bullets run out, but Chuck then decides to go all Van Damme on the rest of the ghouls until running back to the farmhouse. Once there, he discovers that the ghouls can't come near the house. Well, most of them anyways. And we hear what the evil sounds like, and it's kind of hard to understand at times. So Chuck dies, and then the others wake up and discover that Chuck and Stacy are dead. And seriously, Corey really doesn't seem to care who lives or who dies. Then they hear a car pull up, and it's 2 more of Corey's friends. Damn, man. How many people do you need to help you look around a farm? The friends that show up are Rena, played by Mia Ruiz, and Willie, played by Richard Gabai. They try telling them not to shut off the engine, but they don't hear them until it's too late. Del and Terry decide that they don't want to spend another night in the house, so they head out to get help. As they're walking away, both Jack and Corey say they don't think they're going to make it. So I have a theory on why Corey invited all of his friends to the farm. See, I think maybe he knew it was cursed and that people would die. See, he's been wanting to find new friends for a while, but he didn't want to have that awkward conversation with his current friends about not wanting to hang out anymore, so he invited them to the farm, hoping that they would all die, because that would make his life so much easier. Or if they didn't die, they would at least be too traumatized to want to hang out with him. Either way, it's a win-win for him. I'm on to you, Corey. Then Jack suggests that they go into the barn and attack whatever it is that's causing all the evil. Everyone agrees, even these two poor bastards who just showed up. We cut back to Del and Terry, and the fog rolls in again. And when it clears, Del can't find Terry initially, but when he finally does, we see she's changed. And again, this is very reminiscent of Evil Dead and Army of Darkness, with people just changing into essentially deadites without any notice. Terry kills Del, and we cut back to the group heading into the barn. Once in there, they find an altar to the devil. Rena starts talking about how beautiful it is when this happens, and Willie doesn't seem concerned at all about what's happening to her. Maybe he wants a new girlfriend. After she dies, undead or possessed, or you know what, let's call him possessed undead, Stacy and Chuck show up and bitch slap Willie like a pimp asking for his money. And then they push around the others until Corey pulls out the dagger, and we find out that the dagger will indeed help them against the evil. They run out of the barn, and it's not until they get to the house that they realize they just left Willie there. And Corey's like, oh no, that's terrible. I sure hope he's not dead? Possessed undead Rena shows up with Willie's head, and Corey stabs her with the dagger and decides to just leave it in her. Corey, you know daggers aren't a one-time use weapon, right? She then dies, again I guess, and disappears along with the dagger. Then Stacy, Chuck, and other possessed undeads start to come off the barn and start trying to get into the house. Grandma's spells hold them off, well, at least for a little bit, but then they start coming in through the windows. Jack decides to go check on the back room by himself, and when he does, Terry shows up and bites him on the hand, and he starts to turn. Meanwhile, Corey is shooting everyone who tries to get in a sequence that definitely could have been cut down a little bit. He tells Elaine to get his grandmother's diary and Jack, and when she does, she finds out that Jack's become one of the possessed undead.
It's Jackie.
And I get why they did the evil voices like this, but I can barely understand him. Plus, being undead apparently has made him quite handsy. After he cops a field, Elaine stabs him with the remaining dagger. He kind of had it coming. And she too leaves it in him. What is wrong with you people? Stab him and take it out. He then Benjamin buttons it before turning into a dove? I don't know. Corey gets pushed back to the hallway she's in, and she says she saw Jack's soul. I mean, sure, why not? A dove is a soul. Then the possessed undead get into the hallway, and instead of attacking them, they just kind of lean towards them. And when they finally do decide to attack, we hear this.
I have arrived, my children. Gather now. Come, my sheep.
And all of the undead leave. When they go outside, we see that apparently Harcourt was in on it all along. He goes on about his reward for his children and that they are going to open up the door for their beloved father. Then this happens, which isn't done well. I mean, even for the time it was made. Then he turns into this ugly bastard and Bonnie shows up out of nowhere. I mean, I thought she was already dead. Then, I think I'll call him Fuggo, starts draining Bonnie, and every time they show her face, she's a bit older, which is kind of cool, actually, until she's nothing more than bones. They decide to read from Grandma's diary, and as they are doing so, Fuggo walks in, and the hooves are a nice touch, I gotta say. And after finishing the reading, Corey grabs what we can only assume is cocaine, and this shit happens. So, I don't even know what the hell is happening right now. I mean, it looks like Corey transformed into an alien, so sure, let's just go with that. Whatever it is, it causes Corey to get ballsy in more ways than one, but it's short-lived. After getting blasted around, Fuggo palms Corey's face before Corey passes out. When he wakes up, all of the gang is alive again. Don't you do it. Don't you dare pull that it was all a dream crap. They tell Corey that he passed out as soon as they walked in, Everything's back to normal until... You know, they really loved having stuff come out of people's mouth in this movie. Turns out Fuggo was just trying to trick him. Good. I did not want them to cheap out on the ending of this movie. Corey comes back to them, and we see Elaine is now possessed undead, but then Corey heals her? Somehow? Yeah, okay, sure, why not? Then Fuggo makes him see his dad slitting his wrist and attacking him before Corey says that he's not scared of Fuggo, and some other stupid shit.
You're terrified of us because we're alive.
He then gets shot-putted across the room and makes a pretty solid effort at defending himself. Luckily, Elaine shows up to save his ass, and while she has him distracted, this happens. What? What the? So he can fly now? Oh, sure, yeah, that totally makes sense. Elaine reads the last spell in the diary, and this happens. Which, after the flying, doesn't even seem that bad. And wait a second, is that the same explosion that they showed in the beginning? Wait, let's take a look here. Okay, so this is the explosion at the beginning. Okay, yeah, cool, stuff's on fire. Alright, so now this is the explosion at the end. Yeah, son of a bitch, yeah, that's the same explosion. I mean, you couldn't even spend the money to give us another different explosion? Well, I guess that's probably how they could afford the amazing aging makeup they used for Rufus Norris. We then see that Corey and Elaine are still alive, and even Elaine says,
You're human again.
So what the hell was he? Oh god, there's so many questions about this movie right now. We then cut to Elaine going into the cafe, and we find out that the waitress is one of the possessed undead as well. Then Corey comes in, and apparently he's mastered using the diary as a weapon overnight. Alright, whatever. And as they drive off, we see that little ginger girl again, only now she's undead too. So, would I recommend Demon Wind?
No thanks.
No, we're fine.
No. I mean, it starts off pretty decent, and most of the acting isn't too bad, but the last 15 minutes or so really ruined the movie for me. Plus, having it be kind of hard to understand what the undead are saying doesn't help. I mean, if you do want to check it out for some reason, I'll put a link in the description where you can check it out for free. If you have seen Demon Wind, let me know in the comments what you thought of it. And now for some fun facts. The budget for this movie was $500,000. They shot this movie in 24 days. I still have no idea what the hell Fuggo was saying at the end of the movie. I mean, I sure hope it wasn't important. Lou Diamond Phillips was married to one of the assistant directors, so he was on set often and actually played a demon under a pseudonym. I don't care what anyone says, there's no way that Rufus Norris is the same as that Rufus Norris. It's impossible. I will fight anyone on that. Well, that's it for this one. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you next time.